I'm Steve, and this is This Week with Cars. Remember those 6 Sprites that I found in a barn? Well, today I'd like to take a look at car number 2. I want to clean it out, take a look at it, and see if I can get it running and driving today. But before I do that, I want to take a look at car number 1. As you can see, the car turned out great. The paint actually polished out very well. On the inside, I just cleaned it out. The car does start very easily now. Underneath the bonnet, you can see I now have put new high tension leads on it. I put a new distributor cap and rotor on it, replaced the radiator hoses. I did end up putting a new fuel pump on it. The old one kind of disintegrated. And the biggest thing this car needed was a new master cylinder, so put in a new master cylinder so that the clutch and brake would work now. My intentions are just to leave this car as is and only replace things as needed to keep it running. The first things that I notice under the bonnet, I'm going to need to clean up this mouse nest, and I'm also going to need a regulator because those wires are live, so I'll need to install that before connecting the battery. This pipe right here, this is the oil pressure feed line to the oil pressure gauge, and there's also no sender for the temp sender, and that is because there is no oil and temp gauge in this car. That's missing. So I'll need to either plug that pipe or hook up a gauge before I fire the engine up, or oil will be shooting out of there. I don't really need to worry about the temperature sender right now. There's not even any hoses on the radiator, but you don't need any water in it to fire it up. Over here on this side, you can see that the fuel feed line does not have a hose connecting it to the fuel pump, and that is also a non-standard fuel pump down there. But other than those things, it looks like it will be a pretty straightforward start. So now let's clean the inside out, see if we find any of these parts that we need. Door panel just fell off. For those who don't know, the correct door panels for these have this metal flange stapled to them. A lot of the reproductions do not come with that, and you just affix it straight to the door, but this is the way that it was put together originally. Okay, it's a white convertible top. Both sets of side curtains. Here's the missing pipe that goes to the oil pressure gauge. There's some exhaust clamps here. I did notice that there was no tailpipe coming out of the back of the car. So that means there might not be any exhaust on this car. Taking a look back underneath the carburetors, there is no exhaust coming down, so this has just a straight exhaust manifold. So if we get this started, it's going to be pretty loud. In the back, these are just the panels that go on the sides back here in the back. You can see all of this nice original rubber flooring here, as well as way back here in the boot. It's just a shame that it doesn't have any of the pieces that come further up here. Over here on the driver's side, just a mirror. Here's those missing bonnet stays. So that's a great find. I just need to bolt these on, and then the bonnet will be held up safely. This is kind of neat. This is the original tie down for the spare tire in the boot. as well as the original door check straps. I grabbed one of those old regulators that I found in car number 5 last time, and I sprayed some PB Blaster on all these terminals to get these screws loosened up. I've seen a lot of these break off, and I wanted to make sure that they went up and down easily before I broke any of them off. So now let's get this in the car and get the wiring hooked up. I got the regulator hooked up, so now I can put a battery in. Just grab that and set that in there. I got the battery in, but the battery cables were removed, so I need one wire coming from this terminal down to the starter solenoid, and another from that terminal over to that hole on the firewall. Now I'm just going to tap the wire to the terminal, see if it sparks. It does not, so that means it's safe to connect it. Next thing to do, I suppose, would be to see if the engine has any oil in it. Sure does. I just glanced down here. This is the wire that would run to the starter, and looks like this car doesn't even have a starter on it, so I'm going to need to go and grab one of those. Here's my box of Sprite starters. I already had this pulled out because the junkyard dig guys were here and they needed a starter for an MG Midget that they were working on. So I'll just grab one of these, test it. If I find one that works, we'll use that and throw it in the car. Okay, it looks like this one works. Show you how you test it. Just hook a battery up to it, see if it spins. So I'll put this one in, see if the engine turns over. Now this may seem impossible at first, but you can get the starter slid into there if you take the distributor cap out and move it out of the way, and you lower the starter through this hole first with holding onto the Bendix and putting the back of the starter where the cable connects down in first. Then you can kind of move it around the distributor and get the Bendix started into the hole. Then you can just push it forward and bolt it in. Okay, I got the starter installed. It's pretty simple on the top. Just put the bolt through it, put a nut on the back. Before that lower bolt, there's an access hole in the transmission tunnel. Just pull the rubber plug out, and then you can see you have access to slip the bolt in for the starter through there. And I just use an extra long one there to make it easier to get the nut on the other side. I have the starter completely hooked up, so let's give it a go. Nothing. So I'm going to pull the spark plugs out real quick. We'll take the compression off of it. Alright, let's see if we can see anything down in there. Looks a bit rusted inside number 1. Number 2 looks nice. Number 3 looks nice. Number 4 also looks a little rusted. Set the starter again. Since I already had the spark plugs out, I sprayed a little bit of lubricant in there. And I've taken the nut off of this cable that goes down to the starter. As you can see, power is going to the starter. What I'm going to try is hitting the starter with this large object while I'm applying power to it and seeing if we can get it to spin. Normally at this point, I would put the car in gear and rock it back and forth, trying to get the wheels to turn the engine over, but when I did that, the car still rolled, so I don't think there's a drive shaft installed on this car right now, so I'm going to have to go back in my parts and find a drive shaft, put the car on the lift, and get the drive shaft on it. So that's going to have to wait for another episode, so I think this is as far as I can go today. That's it today for Sprite number 2. If you want to see more videos like this, comment below and click subscribe.